While it may be cold outside, things are getting toasty warm at Global Voice Broadcasting. Heat up your winter nights with the hottest topics, the hottest celebrities, and today's best music. It's why Global Voice Broadcasting is becoming your 24/7 home for the music and talk you want right now. Discover your favorite shows and music anytime at globalvoicebroadcasting.com.
I highly recommend Ms. Hicks. Her books, her CDs are encouraging.
I bought her book, A Hill to Climb. She's a very inspirational speaker.
And I look forward to one day being able to work with her.
Your power lies within you. Let it loose.
Aspiration, inspiration, motivation, edification, determination. These are the keys of life success brought to you by none other than award-winning author, motivational lecturer, business consultant, and much more as she gets you aimed to your purpose. And now, ladies and gentlemen, young and elder, from Hollywood to the entire world, here is your host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, Louise Hicks, along with her co-host, yours truly, Kenan Wesley Mason.
Hello, world. Once again, I'm Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us with my co-host and my biological son, of course, Kenan Wesley Mason, and also Mika the Diva. And why don't we just jump right in? We hope you all had a great weekend, and we're going to jump in and have our community and entertainment news. And we have a great show with you today. We have our Skype-in guest, Rahiem Shabazz, who is the filmmaker of our topic today. And that topic is elementary genocide, the school to prison pipeline. And we also have in the studio with us Professor Baron K. Brown, who has been here twice before, and he's back by popular demand. So let's jump right in with Mika the Diva. What do you have for us, Mika, for the community and entertainment news?
Hello, friends. It's your girl, Mika the Diva, and as always, it's time for some entertainment and community news. I actually do not have box office reports for you today, but I will have those next week. We're going to see, because it was a slow weekend at the theaters, but we'll have something for you next week. I just want to talk really quickly about media and with the Sony hack and how responsibility from the executives is really playing a role, I think, behind the scenes. The Guardians of Peace, as they are calling themselves, hacked Sony on November 24th. CEO Michael Lighton, Chairman Amy Pascal, and producer Scott Rudin are all caught up in this web of crazy emails that kind of got leaked as a result of this hack. And now this was in a result, as people are saying, from the pending release of the movie The Interview, which is about journalists who were sent overseas to basically take out North Korean believe Prime Minister, President, forget what he's called, but Kim Jong-un.
Yes.
And so basically what's happening is you've got all of these emails out there, some that are very racially charged that the public are saying, emails from Rudin and Pascal talking about Obama and what his favorite movies are, but they're all black themed, and it's kind of set off this firestorm of racial claims. Since then, Rudin has apologized for the remarks. They were racially insensitive, as he claimed. And then Kevin Hart was also kind of in the mix of that, because we've got so many films that Sony is planning to put out.
Yeah, I read about that this morning. Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart, but he was very, very I guess he had some couth about his response, and he's basically like, hey, I'm focused on working, and I've built my own brand, so I'm kind of unbothered. Hashtag unbothered by all of this, but obviously behind the scenes, I know it hurts a bit, because these are people that you work with and you think that are kind of in good company, and then you find out not so much. So also, as a result of the hack, medical records of thousands of employees of Sony have been released, and it's just kind of spiraled out of control. So we'll kind of keep you posted on that. But some of the films that have already been leaked are Annie. And we also heard that the new James Bond film, the script for that has also been released. So it's going to be interesting to see how Sony is able to kind of combat this. But I think this speaks to a bigger issue, which is North Korea is not playing, y'all. And I think that it's, you just got to be a little bit more careful when it comes to the type of stuff that you put out,
yes,
especially if there, can kind of be some bad blood between the countries on that, because it's still, we rely on those numbers, box office numbers for the films that come out of Hollywood. So.
Yeah, and who did they call in for the healing process? I've read something about that too.
Oh, well, I mean, the FBI is now involved. This is an investigation that they've kind of taken on.
Jesse and Al, I heard they were called into it, or to
oh Lord, well, no, I haven't heard that. All I know is that they've consulted. Sony is enlisting the FBI, and this is a federal investigation now.
Gonna be interesting.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see what happens with that. And then for community news, I think this is kind of appropriate since we're going to be speaking about just race in America again, and with the elementary genocide. I think it's a good point to just kind of highlight what's happening around the nation. And there's been 3 different protests over the weekend. National Action Network, that is the organization led by Al Sharpton, and the Urban League, they've kind of put it out there, hey, get moving. Let's keep talking about this. I think, inherently we're kind of a nation of forgetters, and things like this happen, with the Mike Brown case and Trayvon Martin and Eric Garner. And so they're just out there, peaceful protests, might I add, taking place in Missouri, New York, and Washington, D.C. So I haven't heard too much about there being anything too crazy going on. But again, keep on, having your voices heard, peaceful protests again, and just make sure that we continue to come together. And I guess on to you guys. I really would like to open up the dialogue just to kind of see how you guys are feeling post the indictment not happening and what you're seeing in the news.
That's part of our program. So what we're going to do is just hold off, and we're going to take a commercial break here, and we're going to come back with our special guests, and we're going to talk about all of these things.
Yes.
So why don't we go ahead and take a break, and then we're going to come back with our special guest who's Skyping in, filmmaker Rahiem Shabazz, and our in-house guest, Professor Baron K. Brown. So let's just... Thank you so much.
You're
welcome.
What
an interesting community and entertainment news today.
Yes, okay. I'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Mika the Diva.
So we're going to commercial break.
Hey folks, it's Ken here. If you or someone you know around the world has a small business, organization, or foundation you'd like to share with the Aim to Purpose audience, showcase it here on our segment of the show called Small Business Monday. The opportunities for people around the world to browse, buy, and use your products and services are endless. We pre-screen all businesses, organizations, and foundations for legitimacy, but because this is a free community service brought to our audience, it's at no cost to you as well. You heard it right. It's absolutely free, and you don't have to pay 1 penny. How do you like that? You just come on down to the studio and tell the story of your business, organization, or foundation, and give it the praises and accolades you know it deserves. If you're in another part of the state or country, or if you're in another part of the world, you can easily call in or Skype in and do the same. So what are you waiting for? Contact the show's publicist, Shamika Brown, at www.divinebrownmedia.com. She can also be contacted at 1-818-533-8463. Or contact Louise Hicks at www.louisehicks.biz. She can also be contacted at 1-562-310-1495. Allow yourself to be seen by the global masses and allow your business to shine and grow because of the global masses. It's Small Business Monday, courtesy of Aim to Purpose, the radio show.
Hello, world. We're back. And as I said at the top of the show, we have two special guests today. And we are really going to inspire you and bring some very important information to enlighten, empower, educate, because we know that the world is in a crisis, not just America, the world. And we are having so many challenges. And this is so dear to my heart, this show, because I love children. And we are losing a lot of our children who are growing up. Juveniles are just getting worse and worse with the building. So what we're going to do is go right into introduction of our two special guests here. And Kenan is going to give you some background on our guest.
Well, first, our first guest needs no introduction. He's been here. This is his third time here. Cal State University, Dominguez Hills, University of Laverne, former police officer, deputy sheriff. He's the professor of the Administration of Justice program at Chaffee Community College, right here in Southern California. Captain in the U.S. Coast Guard Reserve. Once again, please welcome our special guest and friend of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, Professor Baron K. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Brown, for joining us.
Absolutely.
This is real good. It's great to have you back.
It's great to be back.
To talk about this specific subject. And with that being said, let's introduce our feature guest. Rahiem Shabazz is the owner of the Rasha Entertainment Incorporated, and is an award-winning journalist and filmmaker. The Gifted Writer's Byline has been spotted on the pages of The Source, XL Magazine, Vibe Magazine, Rolling Out, Urban Enterprise Magazine, and AllHipHop.com, to name a few. Shabazz has appeared on BET, Stars in Black, and MTV News. He has interviewed an array of celebrities and executives, including media maven Tyler Perry, hip-hop legend 50 Cent, and entertainment icon Magic Johnson. As a documentary filmmaker, Rahiem Shabazz executive produced Elementary Genocide, which exposes the socially engineered mechanism created by our government and utilizing the public school system to label elementary-aged African-American males as work-for-hire targets within the U.S. penal system. Elementary Genocide confirms this theory and seeks to educate parents, teachers, and families so that we can reclaim our young men and ensure the future of our community. Shabazz routinely appears in interviews on television, radio, and in print, and on the internet discussing the schools to prison pipeline. He routinely travels the United States as a public speaker at colleges and community organizations, at various institutions, and in a wide range of diverse communities. His most recent speaking engagements include stops at Clark Atlanta University, Morehouse School of Medicine, Cal State University, Union Baptist Church, and Melee's, I believe I'm saying that right, documentary cinema. Rahiem Shabazz is currently working on the sequel to Elementary Genocide called The Board of Education versus the Board of Incarceration. So let's welcome our featured guest today on Aim to Purpose, the radio show, Mr. Rahiem Shabazz.
Hello, Mr. Rahiem. How are you?
I'm good.
Good, and thank you so much for joining us on Aim to Purpose, the radio show today. We really appreciate it. And the documentary, I got it. I mean, I just couldn't get enough of it. I'm going to be watching it over again and sharing it with so many people, because you really have done a good service by providing and documenting this crippling impact that we're having upon our society, particularly in elementary school with the young people. So with that being said, and hearing all of these accolades on you, what really inspired you, and do you mind if I call you Rahiem?
Yes, you can call me Rahiem.
Okay, what inspired you to take an interest in education?
Well, I come from the unruly streets of Harlem and the Bronx and New York City, and when I grew up, I seen that there was a disparity in the education that one receives in the inner city as opposed to one that lives in the suburbs. And I found myself on the wrong side of the law. And I was a product of that school to prison pipeline because I dropped out of school and eventually I ended up behind enemy lines and behind that wall. And while I was incarcerated, I seen that education provided me with a platform to see things for what they was and not what they present themselves to be. And anything that was imaginable was able to be obtained through education. So to make a long story short, after I served my time in prison, I came out. I had a college degree and I started my career as a journalist. And ever since then, I've been working for myself as a journalist and I transitioned over to film. And I wanted to make a movie, a documentary that was more than a documentary. It was going to be a call to action. And I think that's what I did with Elementary Genocide.
And indeed, you did do a call to action. And where did you grow up? You said you grew up on the streets, and I mean, experience is a great teacher. That is always my philosophy. And I grew up in the South, and you're Skyping in also quickly. Where are you Skyping in from?
I now reside in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been down here for 12 years now.
Okay.
Originally from the Bronx and Harlem.
Okay, so you grew up in New York.
Yes.
Okay, great, great. And experience is a great teacher. And you guys just jump right in when you get ready. We have Dr. Baron Brown here, and he's been here with us on more than one occasion. This is his third trip, and we really don't want it to be his last trip here. But and you decided to do this documentary. Now I really understand and get it because of your experience. And I always say that experience is a great teacher. Now, I grew up in just the opposite. We were in two different worlds. I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I didn't know about the hard knocks of street life because at the age I am now, 63, growing up in the South where I went to a segregated school and really we had good values. We had a community of love, people that showed love for us, and we've gotten so much far away from that. And I think that's where a lot of the problems stem from. And that's why I was so glad that you did this documentary and wanted to share it with us. And now that we're global, we know we're seeing the world, and the world is seeing us now, how things are here in America. And I know they're saying they're not really what they have perceived America to be, because I know it's not all that I perceived it to be as a young kid growing up. And I've seen some progress and some differences now, but there is so much more that needs to be done. And with people like you, myself, and the global guests, I've had many on the show, we are starting to be more understanding, but there's so much more to be done. And now, with you saying you being incarcerated at some point in time, and then you come out, you decide you want to make a difference, a positive difference, I say, because there are a lot of negative differences as well. So I always dwell on the positive. But what do you think about parents, and where were your parents when you were growing up? Since you said you had this situation, where were your parents, and what do you think about the role of parents in our children's lives?
As far as my personal experience, my parents was there. I grew up with a father, very stern father, who instilled a lot of values in me, and I carry those values with me today. However, me being who I was and being hard-headed, stick-necked, and rebellious, I failed to listen to him. And there's only certain leverage that parents have on you. When you reach a certain age, you're able to decide and do what you want. And I chose to do what I want as opposed to listening to what my father was saying. And it definitely created a path for me that I ended up on the wrong path. And I think that parents need to play a crucial role in the decisions of their kids, and you have to teach them very early. And I tell people all the time, children doesn't drop out of school until parents drop out of their life. And that's the reality of it. No matter what, you have to be there through thick and thin. And I think by me being incarcerated, my father, he was like there every step of the way, and we wind up getting closer. And everything that he told me was going to happen happened. And he just gave me solutions and just told me, when you get out, you got to do it different this time. Your way didn't work, so why don't you try it my way? And
I like
tried
that.
it
Right. That's right.
I like that. Now, how old were you,
yeah.
Rahiem, when you first were incarcerated, and how long were you there?
You said, where was I?
How old were you when you first
Oh.
became incarcerated, and your dad, you didn't listen like we know a lot of kids don't now, and that's one of the problems, even though they come from good intact homes, quote unquote. But how old were you, and how long were you incarcerated?
Well, I don't want to go through the first time because it was numerous of times.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay.
yeah, the
No.
last time was the final time.
Okay.
When I said, you know what, they're not playing no more. And I was 24 years old, and
Oh, okay.
I did 6 years, and I wound up coming out when I was 30 years old. I actually got released 8 days. I actually graduated at the top of my class, the 5% of my class, 8 days before I got released. So that was a monumental moment for me to graduate from college, and then 8 days later, I was emancipated with my freedom. So definitely was a time for me to reflect during those 8 days after I had that, degree in my hand. It was like, what are you gonna do with it? So I came out, and I did the right thing, and I'm proud of it. And I could look back, and I could say it was a learning experience. And a lot of people, you don't have to go through that experience. So that's why I'm trying to tell my hard knock story and get people on the right path.
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Professor Brown. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Rahiem, right?
Yes.
Okay, Rahiem. One is thank you for being on the show tonight. Thank you for being on the show because your empirical knowledge, your life experience is invaluable. We can't even measure it. We can't pull out any kind of metric to measure what you endured and what you went through. And the thing that I do want to seriously pay an accolade to you on is that you address two key issues: parents and early intervention. And the thing about it is that the only way to actually save these kids, and that's across color lines, but especially when you're talking black and brown, is parents and the modeling that parents provide for their kids and being that example for them and laying down those values and those rules. And kids, they're going to be rebellious. They're going to listen to some of it, and they're going to disregard some of it. Understood. And the early intervention, if we can grab them early enough, and I'm not talking about at high school level, I'm not even talking about middle school level, I'm talking about K through 5, and instilling not only the values, but starting to lay down some pathways for them and telling them you are of value. That is one of the biggest problems that we have within American culture, within this country, is that we devalue certain groups of people. And I think that, unfortunately, black and brown men definitely pay the price on devaluation. And I even think when we look at our criminal justice system and the way that they're approached, when you see maybe a young black man or a young Hispanic man, you see one thing. You see a young white man, you see something else. Do you clutch your purse tighter? Do you back up in the elevator? Do you pull your child closer? Do you stare him down and wonder, is he getting ready to come over here and approach me? Whereas if you see the kid next door that looks like your son, all of a sudden the perception is different. So I do think that your documentary definitely hits on some nerves. And I don't know if I have really a true articulation of the quote-unquote conspiracy, but definitely the quiet coordination of institutional racism that is present within this country is definitely in place. Whether Bill O'Reilly agrees or not, doesn't really matter.
It sure doesn't.
Right.
You know, since he postulates that these are uniquely African American problems, as he talks about black culture, these are American problems, and we are Americans. And if one part of your body is hurting, you need to pay attention to it, so the whole body is complete. Every time that you don't include a group, you lose part of your solutions. And so that's why we as a community should not tolerate being devalued.
And I agree with that, because I always say no man is free until all men are free. And that's one of the problems we have in American society. And it's not just here either, it's across the world. And we know that racism truly does exist. And that is one of the reasons that I decided to do this show, and I feel that I was put on a mission to do this show because we are about empowering, educating, inspiring people, as well as bridging the gap on cultural issues that impacts all of us. And we all are human. When it boils down to it, we all are human beings. And when we start seeing each other in that respectful light, we can have a better world to live in. And I know Rahiem Ken is my biological son, and I have 2 sons and a daughter. And with me having 2 sons, being my oldest of 2 boys, and being mostly a single parent most of my life, I've had to learn a lot of things about the racism in the system, and having to talk to my sons and help them to stay alive, because I know the mentality, and that's not to say that all police officers are bad. No, they're not, because we need them.
Correct.
We have, most of them are good. They have good intentions, and most of them are decent, law-abiding human beings themselves. It's the ones who aren't, and that are part of all of this racism, that's creating the problem. And I know, Kenan, you wanted to say something too.
Well, yeah. The early intervention was mentioned, and I have a daughter that's 4 months old, and I'm intervening with her early on certain aspects of life as she gets older, so she doesn't have the outside influences that most people, or that most children have, as they grow up, that could lead them into a world of trouble. Black men are predominantly perceived as being great sports figures, or great musicians, or great criminals, or great minds of disarray on reality television, versus being great intellects. So why, for my question to you is, why choose black men to focus on, and will you do a documentary potentially on black women that may be in the same that may be leading down that same road as many black men are?
Particularly, Rahiem, since we see an increase in female incarceration.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that's one of the grave mistakes I made with this documentary, is that I did not highlight a lot about the black woman and females in general. And I learned so much from releasing this documentary, and that's why I came back with the sequel, The Board of Education versus the Board of Incarceration, because I since learned that between 1980 until today, there's an 800% increase in incarceration when it comes to females.
Right.
And the statistics is there. It's real disheartening. And when you look at it, females have it better than the males sometimes in certain aspects.
Right.
And I think that it's going to take, addressing the issues that's dealing with the males as well as the females, because, when you're teaching them, they both are taught differently, and their learning aspect is a little different. But I think we have to tackle both of these problems. And to go back to what you guys was talking about as far as early intervention, I always tell people, first, you designated as a bad kid by the school.
Right.
And then a person of interest by the police.
Classical
and then a
labeling
gangster by society.
That's right.
So what we have to do is we have to get them ready before they go to school. Because in the documentary, it tells you that if you're not reading by the 3rd grade level, that there's a 75% chance that you're going to jail. And what they look at is they look at these figures and determine how many prisons to build in the next 10 to 15 years. That's when I did the documentary. Those was the statistics. But we since learned, and the Justice Department, they released a report on this. So, you know, people can't say it's an urban myth when it's coming from the highest office in the land, that the school to prison pipeline and the disparity begins way before the 3rd grade. It's just that they're able to track it at the 3rd grade. It begins the first day that a black or brown child steps foot in a classroom. You know, and, you know, if you look at the reality, black and brown children are labeled and sometimes treated as little more than criminals before they lost their baby teeth. Just recently here in Atlanta, they had a situation with a special needs child who was handcuffed, you know, until his parents came to pick him up from school because he was acting out. And they said that he was banging his head on the desk, and they handcuffed him in order for him not to hurt himself. The psychological effect that is going to have on that young man is phenomenal. And I don't understand how you don't have trained teachers that are trained specifically to deal with special needs children. So, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, we the holders and keepers of ourselves in predicament, and we're going to have to start teaching our own kids, whether it's homeschooling, and even if you're not allowed or in a position to homeschool, the school is not over when the 3 o'clock bell rings.
And you know, Rahiem, you're so right about that. And the reason being why we don't have all this special, you know why? Because they want to keep the kids drugged up, because it's a greed situation here. And I'm going to call it out because I could have had this problem with my daughter. She's now 25. And when my son was sick with cancer, which inspired my first book, I'm an author as well as a speaker, the school, she was in a Christian school, and we're going to talk about that too in a bit, about how religion plays this role in all of this divisiveness as well. But they wanted me to put her on Ritalin because we know that all of these drugs, and my son can address a lot more about the drug situation, but these drugs are being distributed to these kids, and they're being labeled mentally ill because it's all about the pharmaceutical companies getting rich. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And it's not about the kids now. It's about the greed in our country. And that is what is really causing a lot of this chaos. And with that said, what we want to do is play the trailer so that many of our listeners can see exactly. We're not going to play the whole trailer because of time constraints we have here. But we want to play a couple of minutes of it right quick. And then we're going to take a minute to talk about it a little more, and then we're going to take a commercial break. So let's play the first couple of minutes of it, and we want you to shed some more light on what we're talking about. And we really appreciate you being our guest today, you and Professor Brown.
Thank you.
America is a capitalist society.
Anything that drives a profit.
As long as prisons are big business,
America is down with it.
Washington, D.C. area are suspended or expelled 2 to 5 times more often than white children. It's a national trend that needs to be addressed.
And even with education, there's no jobs.
You don't have a choice but to do some dumb shit.
The best days in the United States are behind us.
You know, they undereducate you. After that, they underemploy you. Even under the president that looks like you.
Indicators are telling us that it's headed downhill.
You're a walking, talking uranium for these people. You're a stick of gold with mouth and eyes and ears.
Most states in America Look at the reading level of black boys at the conclusion of elementary school, which is normally 4th or 5th grade, to predict how many new prison cells they'll need in the next decade. Statistically, if a black boy cannot read by the time he finishes the 5th grade, there's a 75% chance that he will be a criminal by the age of 25. It is the relationship between miseducation and criminology.
When you look at...
Okay, now that is powerful.
Can I jump in here?
Yes, please do. You're the professor of criminology, Professor Brown. Jump right in.
Well, one is that when Rahiem alluded to being labeled early, and that goes back to classical labeling theory. As you look at criminological models and things, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Basically, if you're saying you're going to amount to nothing, you aren't worth anything, that person starts to actually believe that, and it actually starts to materialize within that person's psyche and so on. And when he talked about the traumatizing effect of a 12-year-old being handcuffed, who already is a special needs child, schools need to be prepared to deal with, considering that autism has taken such a high profile within the last 10 years, with numerous stars, celebrities who have talked about their children suffering from autism or Asperger's. It's striking to me that school would not have a better resourced way or method of which to deal with a child who is even physically acting out, because there are methods that are better than handcuffing. And my thing is that if you value that child as a human being of equivalent value as your child, and if you thought of that child as someone who looks like your child, how would you have addressed that child? Would there have been more hesitation in placing handcuffs or putting that child into a situation where it looks like this child is a criminal and this child is traumatized? Would you have gone that extra step to not further traumatize this child? And so you look at all these factors, and one thing that Rahiem did say when he talked about, being hard-headed and not listening, he did own it. That's the sweet thing about it right now, is that he did own it. And he said, something to the effect of personal accountability. No, I didn't listen to Pops. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I did it my own way, and booyang, I end up in custody. And see, and when he looked in the mirror and said, where are the solutions? And I know that 90% of the solutions start with me. And he took that ownership piece.
That's right.
Then that was a huge step in his extrication from his place that he was in.
It's the biggest step.
It's the biggest step. It's the biggest step. And so taking the ownership is a big piece, and also showing our kids the pathways early. That's why I said early intervention is critical. If you are telling children at the end of their K through 5 matriculation that you can amount to something and you can pursue whatever pathway you want to academically, instead of only celebrating the 15-year-old that can slam dunk and the 16-year-old that runs 4.40, are we celebrating that kid that got the A on the trigonometry test? Are we talking about the STEM options? Are we talking about other vocational pathways? My dad was a plumber, and he made good money. Okay, yes. One of my closest friends is a senior electrician. And on a bad day, he's doing $50 an hour. So, I mean, there are alternative pathways. College doesn't have to be the only pathway. There could be trade school, there could be technical school, there could be apprentice programs, on-the-job training programs. But we need to introduce these alternative pathways to kids. If Rahiem had known about possibly legal ways of doing his business, however, whatever his hustle was, and you don't have to even go into the details,
of course.
No,
but
of course
whatever,
not.
Whatever the principles were, there are these alternative pathways being introduced. And if you only have 2 pathways that you see in your neighborhood of either I can be a dope dealer or a thug, then those are the only 2 pathways I have. Then I guess that's where I'm going. But if no one takes the time to value you, and that's why I say it keeps going back to human valuation.
That's it.
To say that you are of value, you can contribute to your community, to this country, to your family, etc., I envision great things for you. Suddenly that person starts to buy into that philosophy and that positive labeling. Okay, and so if you can do that and have that early intervention and start painting this picture for them early, and this is parental, this is community-based, this is educationally, and to have our kids not be devalued within the education system, there is enough blame to go around, but there's also enough collective hands that can pull this situation out of the fire that it's in. But it will take a coordinated, concerted effort, of which is probably the heaviest lift that we have, is getting everybody on board at the same time, in lockstep, moving towards the mission.
And speaking of being on board, Rahiem, I want to ask you this. As far as our, quote, black leadership is concerned, we have the two most well-known, Mr. Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, of course, and females in Congress, such as Congressman Maxine Waters. Do you believe that they really hold any weight with black people anymore? Do you feel that they, not just them, but others within their circle, do you feel that they even really have a say-so on how black folks operate these days?
No.
Oh, thank you for saying that, because
I
I agree wholeheartedly with you.
That was quick.
Absolutely not. I didn't even have to think about that one. Wow.
Sure didn't.
Politicians are bought and sold.
Right.
If you look at the two biggest private prisons, CCA and GEO, right? CCA is Correction Corporation of America. They sent out a memo to all states, every state, and pretty much what they were saying is that, you know, the federal and the state government, if you let us run your prisons for the next 20 years, we can run them at a discount, but you have to guarantee us a 90% occupancy rate. And what they was doing was, you know, they you have lobbyists that's in Congress that gets money from these from these corporations, and that's how they're able to work. But when you have a directive where you asking them to ensure that you get 90% occupancy rate, then you're going to arbitrarily start locking people up. And we know, you know, a lot of the leadership today is not doing what should be done. For instance, I don't know if y'all aware, but the last 4 to 5 victims that have been brutalized and murdered, that was unarmed but by the hands of officers, you know, Al Sharpton represented them. And the narrative is always the same. Each and every one of them always says it has nothing to do with race. And I find that as a coincidence that when Al Sharpton is involved, it has nothing to do with race. And the reason why is, if you look at Al Sharpton, he just had a birthday, and on the flyers announcing his birthday, there was about 5 or 6 Fortune 500 companies that were sponsoring it.
Of course.
So Al Sharpton is only there to quiet down the natives so they don't burn down the plantation.
Well, I tell you, people are wising up to Al Sharpton, and I'm a little older than him, according to his birthday. I'm 63, and I've seen a lot, and I've heard a lot from my parents, and I know I don't put any stock in anything Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson say. They're part of the problem, as many of them call them the poverty pimps. And I don't buy into that, because I know my history. I went to an all-black school, as I mentioned earlier. I grew up in the South, and we are so delusional. When I first came to California in '69 to go to college, I went to college in California, so I have both worlds here. And some of the people here were so delusional in California, where I am now, where I basically grew up. They thought we were on a plantation in Louisiana. And I grew up among entrepreneurs. I grew up in an all-black community, but they were entrepreneurs, and we saw the spirit of that community sharing. They didn't care whose child you were. If you needed disciplined, they would guide you and chastise you. Not whip you, but they would guide you and chastise you. And we need to get back to the bases. We have gotten so far away from it, taking on the Western culture of violence, because that's where it all came from, until we have lost our way. And we need to get back to it, because we lived in a community of people in Shreveport, Louisiana, known as the Cooper Road, where people cared about you. The teachers cared about you. Even now, the teachers don't care, many of them.
No, they don't.
And that's unfortunate. And we got to get back to the basics if we want our children to survive. And we got to stop blaming everybody except ourselves.
But that's a systemic problem,
and
too.
that's a problem within our own internal community. We have to accept the blame for what we're doing here, or the lack of what we're doing. And we're not doing our jobs, many of us. And the sad part about it, and I want you to address this also, Professor Brown and Rahiem, the sad part about it is many of us, we know that black people have suffered more atrocities than you can even name in this country. However, we are not the worst people on this planet. There are so many other people that are doing other ethnic groups, because we're all of the human race, that have drug problems. They have all these community problems. And there are so many of black people that we have excellent rapport with our children. Our children are excelling. We are entrepreneurs, and this is across the nation. But why don't they report some of that on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC? I rarely hear Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson talking about all the good things. They're always going out promoting something that is bad. And with us being such a small population of this United States, why is it that we are so degraded? So discuss that, as opposed to all the other ethnicities that have issues just like we do.
You got a few factors in there. If I can jump in right before Rahiem does. One is that we do not have a physical ability to assimilate. We cannot. I'm never going to be mistaken for Tom Hanks. Okay? I will not be mistaken
Right.
for anyone outside of being possibly African American or of African descent. So we have one of the biggest challenges is that we don't have the ability to physically assimilate. So assimilation can only happen on a partial level, and it's going to be socioeconomic, class, and education where we have the assimilation. The other piece is that the historical context that we have within this country is unique. And if you look at Native Americans, if you look at the Jewish community and so on, all of them have had their periods of oppression, their periods of genocide and so on, but their history is not identical to ours here within this country. And we have been stigmatized globally. Even when people come from other countries and come here, you have folks that will not associate with African Americans or do not want to be affiliated simply due to the stigma that's attached.
The perception.
Exactly.
That's it. And I wanted you to bring that out. That's why I brought it up.
The other piece is that even as you look at the ones who have what I call partially assimilated and have had to live in a world of code switching, as we look at that, that is a survival instinct. When I have a young brother that will say something to me like, man, you don't even know what's up, man. You moved out of Compton a long time ago. You moved out of L.A. a long time ago. You live in the burbs now. You can't feel me. I said, well, you know what, man? Let's be real with this. You may have been stopped by the police and asked a whole bunch of questions and felt like you got hassled. I just got turned down for 2 promotions that would have raised my family's income about $50,000 a year. I have more degrees than the person that I'm competing against. I have better qualifications.
Been there and done that one too. Understanding.
You have your piece of this problem. I have mine. And so I think that even within our own African American community, we have socioeconomic polarization and a need for a bridging in order for us to be a collective force. We simply are not at that place. And we used to be. My parents are from Shreveport. I think I told you that.
You told me that.
And so we used to
be there, and we
that
had
sense of
that.
community.
And we need to get back to
And
it.
so-
And that's why I've lived it, so I can talk about it from a
There are
wisdom
multiple
and an
factors.
experience standpoint. And you're right about that. And you so well addressed that. And that's why I wanted to bring it out and talk about it, because you're the expert and you so well articulated that. And Rahiem, what we're going to do is take a commercial break, and we're going to come back, and we want you to express your information as to how you feel about the question and the issue.
Okay, not a problem.
Yeah, we'll be right back. This edition of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, is brought to you by L. Hicks Consulting Services. When you want the best in business coaching,
life coaching, or perhaps your organization, business, or company is in need of a dynamic speaker for an upcoming workshop or seminar, contact Louise Hicks for L. Hicks Consulting Services at 1-562-310-1495. From anywhere around the world, that's 1-562-310-1495. For more information about Louise Hicks and her consulting services, visit her website at www.louisehicks.biz. Again, that's www.louisehicks.biz. Or call 1-562-310-1495. L. Hicks Consulting Services, where professionalism is top priority.
Okay, we're back, and again, I'm Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose, a radio show here, along with my son, Kenan Wesley Mason, my co-host, and we're live in the studio with Professor Baron K. Brown of Criminology, as well as Skyped in from Atlanta, Georgia. We have Rahiem Shabazz, who is the director, producer, I hope I'm saying all that right, of this awesome documentary here.
Elementary Genocide.
Hold it up and let everyone see it. We hope you go out and buy this because this is awesome. And parents, you need to get involved in your children's education. It's vital. You got to stay away from the liquor store and invest some of that money in your children. Stay away from the nicotine and invest some of that money in your children. That's vital. I mean, we see a liquor store on almost every corner in the black communities, and we got to get away from all this nonsense that we're perpetuating here. And this is real talk. We don't fake around with it. We just bring it to you. So with that being said, Rahiem, when you address it, also talk about religion, because we know religion is one, I say two of the most divisive establishments we have in this country are religion and politics. And so while you're talking, Rahiem, we're going to give you the floor. Address those issues as well, along with what we had talked about before and that Professor Brown addressed.
Okay. As far as our history and us being over here and the difference between those that may look like us and that come over here voluntarily, there's a quote from John Oliver. And, he says most of us came here in chains, and most of the immigrants and other people, they came here to escape the chains. And their freedom was our slavery, So therein lies the bitter difference in the way we look at life. A lot of the gains that people get and the immigrations and how they able to come over here and immediately open up a bank account, that was made all possible because of what we went through slavery. This country is built on the backs of African American, and I think that what's happening to us is happening because we are very humble people. And earlier you said that there's no other people on the planet that went through what we went through. And I think the reason why it's continued to happen is because they know that we're humble by nature, right, and different things like that. But, pressure bust pipes, and the pressure is on right now. And I think that there's a change, and I hope, that the change come non-violently. But I tell people, and I caught a lot of flack for this, saying it, but I mentioned it on Facebook, and some people didn't agree with it. In fact, a lot of people didn't agree with it. But one of the things I said, someone asked me, do I see a day and time where black youth will no longer be gunned down in the streets by the police, unarmed black youth? And, I was being perfectly honest, and I said, I don't see that happening until white America has a pearl clutching moment, or either that or, racism and white supremacy is eradicated, and I don't see that happening no time soon. But what I do see is that the generation that's coming up today, a lot of white people, as you can see, they out there and they protest, and a lot
Yes,
of
they
people
are.
want justice. And
Right.
I just think that it's the older generation and that mindset,
That's it.
Absolutely.
That's what it
I
is.
concur.
and that's our biggest challenge to fight that mindset of racism and white supremacy, and the way the police is in our community. It's like an occupying army. And if you look at the history of the police, the whole police organization, they was the overseers of the slave plantation, and when the slaves preventing them from escaping. So that whole mindset is still prevalent today. But I'm not going to go on about that. To answer your second question, as far as religion, I really, really don't like to talk about religion. And I graduated by the way, I graduated from the New York Theological Seminary. And I study religion from a non-denominational standpoint. But a lot of people use religion as a crutch.
Yes.
And it was one time, I would go heavy and hard on people like, you need to take that white Jesus down. But I don't do that no more, is because I know that there are certain people, and I have friends, right, that are real religious, and they used to be street thugs and murderers, but they got into the religion and they changed their life around. So it's like, if that religion is helping you lead a righteous life, and that's what you need, then by all means, be a religious person.
Right.
But what I do think is that if you're going to practice religion, that you need to practice it from an Afrocentric standpoint, right? And also, if you're going to practice religion, back in the days of with Martin Luther King, religion was all about social change. And even in the Bible, it talks about seeking justice and doing what's right. So I think if people is going to practice it, they need to look at it in the form of social justice, and ask themselves, what would Jesus do? But don't be so religious where you holier than thou, and then you look at the common folks as if they're, infidels and different things like that. But religion, that ain't my thing. I'm a person that seeks solutions from problems within myself, and I don't really look outside of myself for no solutions to no problems. And I don't believe that the same God that the slave and the slave master was praying to, that they're both gonna seek equal justice. How can you pray to the same God as the slave master and expect different results?
Right.
I just don't see it.
Yeah,
Right.
and I understand. Go ahead, Ken, and we're going to have to kind of wrap it up here. We're running out of time, as usual.
Yeah, we always kind of get into these deep discussions. There is a generational programming where the projection or the perception of black people in general has been tarnished for hundreds of years. But now, as you said, there are more people that are coming on board to help to turn that around, which is always what we want. We want to be in harmony with everyone,
Right.
if at all possible.
Love
and like
is the
Rahiem
key
said,
to all of this.
Right, and like Rahiem said, in a non-violent way. We've had enough violence perpetrated against not only black people, but of other cultures of the world.
Right.
So, but the world isn't turning based on violence. It's turning based on peace. So that we have to lean towards that. So in the last few minutes that we have, Rahiem, if you could sum up what your final solution, I guess, would be, to kind of make this all come together and be right for everyone.
Okay, to sum it up, I don't have all the answers. My answer to eradicate the school to prison pipeline is that we have to practice restorative justice. We have to stop looking at these kids as common day criminals. There was a recent study that came out by neurologists, and it has been confirmed in the medical journals that the front lobe of the brain is not fully developed until you're 25 years old.
Right.
So you have these young adolescents and kids that are doing things that adolescents are prone to do. Their brain is not wired. They don't have the level of reasoning as an adult, but you can be charged as an adult. So I think, some of the situations that happen from, talking in class or being disruptive or being late and you being adjudicated to the court system. And then we know, that is only to prepare you to go to the prison system. And that's the pipeline. And it starts in school. And I think that the school has to take a concert effort to stop this. When you go to the schools in the morning, the first thing you see is a resource officer and a metal detector. And that's like programming them for what's to come to them. In New York City, where I'm from, they have over 5,000 resource officers, which is a code name for police officers. But they have less than that in counselors. How you have more police than you have counselors in the school.
And that is so sad. And it's up to the parents to do something about that. They need to participate in their kids' education, Rahiem. And if you don't mind, I know you're doing this new documentary, and we want you to come back once. When do you expect it to be completed?
That's the question of the day. I'm always asked that. And, I did have a release date on it. But one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to rush greatness.
Right,
and there's probably about there's two more people that I really want to interview that I have on my wish list. Oh,
no problem. We don't want to rush you, but whenever you finish with it, can you come back to us?
Oh, absolutely. I would say around April, I should have it done.
We want you to come back, and we want to have a final. We've run out of time pretty much, but we want to have a final word with Professor Brown, and then we're going to close. We thank you, Rahiem, for coming in, and we're going to touch bases with your PR person. And right quick, we need to let Professor Brown quickly sum up, and then we're going to be out of here.
Okay, if we can simply take a lot of these problems where we have this focus on the African American community and start to actually condition people of seeing this as an American problem, not just a black community problem. Because like I said, if one part of the body is ill, then the whole body is ill. And the other piece is that we need to also celebrate and align what we actually do agree on. We have a lot of concurrence in the things that we want for our families, the jobs that we want, the communities we want to live in. Start from the concurrent discussion and Americanize this problem. And then when we show how it affects across the board, and we're suffering unique problems, but we're also suffering global challenges.
Absolutely.
Then all of a sudden, when it's affecting your kids, and this is an American problem, all of a sudden you'll find solutions. All you got to do is look at Columbine, Aurora,
that's right.
Newtown, Connecticut, because
absolutely.
Shootings in high school has been going on for a long time.
A long time.
Before these events occurred.
Oh, yeah, and atrocities in America, like the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing. Who bombed that? The plane that bombed that black community back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, back in 1921. A wealthy black community. And a lot of people don't know about a lot of these atrocities that have gone on here. And we have to address these things and be open and honest and stop the hypocrisy and the lies. And with that being said, until next week, we thank you all for joining us. We will be back. We're going to have Professor Brown back. We're going to have Rahiem back, because the more we talk about these problems, the better we can really come to an understanding and bring about peace, love, and harmony, not only here in America, but globally. And until next week, your power lies within you. Let it loose.